So, what should be in your art and design portfolio? Well, obviously, one of the sort of key things to think about is what the portfolio is for. Traditionally, you filled in your application form via UCAS. You would then be asked to submit a digital portfolio, and that digital portfolio would then determine whether or not you would be invited for an interview. You would then come to an interview with a physical portfolio of work where you'd have an opportunity to talk through your ideas and to see whether we can get the right sort of fit between your work and the right course. At the moment, obviously under COVID, things have had to change and many universities are doing things in a different way. So what we're doing is we're looking at your UCAS application. We're asking you for a digital portfolio of work. And that portfolio of work is then going to be the basis on which we decide whether we're going to offer you a place or not. We'll then have an opportunity to meet and greet you a bit later on, which we'll do via Microsoft Teams. So what you can see is that much more so than any time before, your digital portfolio is really important. So what's the key thing about what a portfolio should be? It's a way of you presenting your visual thinking. It's about obviously how you organise that information, but at the end of the day, it's also an honest display of where you are at the moment. And what we're interested in, of course, is that potential that we see within the work. So we want to see something of the exploration of your ideas, your own personality, your development and process, your use of materials, your inventiveness, your concepts. We don't necessarily want to see that you've been copying other people, but you've also demonstrated that you're prepared and thought about what you're going to show us, and also that you're showing us a broad range of different activities. So you might think about including sketchbooks. In some instances, some course may want to see written evidence of your work as well. It's not a bad idea to think about labelling the work so that the person looking at your work knows how big the work is. For instance, you may be working on paintings that are 2 metres high, or you might be 3 inches high. So, those things are useful. Also, when did you make the work? And trying to show us the sort of variety of materials and media that you're working with. You want to try to demonstrate how you think, what your process is. That can be done visually or it can be done through words. It's a good idea, as I've already said, to not just show us one kind of work that you think we want to see, but we want to see that sort of breadth of activity. For instance, in your spare time, you may make model aircraft, you may do dressmaking as a hobby and may not necessarily see the relevance of that in your portfolio, but actually it might be really relevant. So showing us a range of things. And also, if you are making claims in your personal statement, be prepared to back up your claims. You're explaining your work and you want it to be an honest development. So if you don't know something, that's also fine. I've put together a link here to a video that's also on my YouTube channel, and there are various different ways in which you can produce a organisation of images. PowerPoint's one of those. In DesignWorks, you can use Google Slides, you can use Flickr, you can use Vimeo, you can use YouTube. You can even think about creating files in your Google account and sharing those things with us. Largely speaking, because of the sheer amount of portfolios that we're getting, one of the things that we're wanting from you is to create links to work rather than actually sending PDFs. So it's a good idea anyway to create a digital portfolio. It's a good idea to know how to make a PDF in case a different institution want you to send PDFs. It's also a really good idea to have a digital portfolio that you can go back to, that you can edit, you can change it, you can move things around. Something which shows us a broad range of work, so 15 to 20 examples of work. You might have more than one piece of work on each page. You want to show us sort of, as I say, a different range of different things. Think about the file sizes, and what you can obviously do is you can visit my other YouTube video, which will tell you how to physically make a portfolio and how to compress your pictures. As I say, you can include various bits of information in there as well. People may be asking questions about, what career is there in art and design? And with a little bit of research in the creative industries, you'll soon find that actually there's an awful lot of opportunities out there. and the creative industries brings a huge amount of money into the economy. These are some figures for a couple of years ago, but these are constantly being updated. So one of the key things to consider is that an art design course isn't just necessarily about being in a studio making art. It's about all those other transferable skills that you learn to develop and foster. Independence of practice, communication, narrative storytelling, being able to organise your work, being able to work and kind of structure your own time. All of those things are definitely things that employers are looking for. So employers want people who are creative, flexible, creatively thinking, critical thinkers, quick thinkers, good at negotiating and kind of communicating with each other, good at working collaboratively, but also self-driven as well. So all of those things, really good attributes to leave a university qualification with. The School of Art and Design offers a range of different courses, and it's important that you look at and research the kind of course that you're applying for. At the University of Brighton, we do a fine art course, we do a fine art painting course. Printmaking sort of borders both the fine art and the kind of visual communications area. We have bespoke courses in graphic design and illustration, which are generally called visual communication. We also have a number of textile design courses, textile and fashion courses, all of which are associated with business studies. So you also learn how to sort of market yourself and kind of, work as an independent practitioner. Also with those courses, the opportunity for a placement year. So we have a textiles design with business studies, fashion design with business studies, fashion communication with business studies. There's a new fashion accessories course started with business studies as well. And we also offer three-dimensional design and craft. So each course will want specific things or want to see specific things in your portfolio. We also have, the School of Media, which obviously we have photography, moving image, digital music and sound, design for digital media, animation, games, art design. You can visit the website, and if you look on the website, you'll find very specific information about, what sort of things we're looking for from an individual course level. And of course, talking to your A-level tutors and your foundation tutors will really help. We also have a variety of online workshops where you can ask specific questions to members of the team and also our student ambassadors. So we've got information on the website about creating a portfolio. We've got obviously this video that you can watch. We've got specific information as to individual courses as to what we want to see in the work. And when you start to make your application, you fill in obviously the formal application first of all, but then you'll have the ability then to send us a message with a link to your portfolio. So what should be in the work? I'm just going to show you some examples of student work. So in this particular instance, as a printmaking student, whilst it's really interesting to see the finished print, this is an etched lino, it's also really useful to see the sort of drawings that led up to that. Don't think that every drawing that you make has to be something you've spent hours on. Equally here we see an interesting exploration of surface, quality, texture, how that's been taken through a kind of series of digital processes to make a more kind of graphic visual solution. This student is experimenting with sort of rubbing and frottage. We've got drawing here, drawing in a use of a broad range of media, compositional studies, again kind of digital analysis of visual information. Here we've got a student who's really being excited by the idea of layering and using handmade stencils, further digital images here, taken further into further idea development. This particular student is really interested in colour, and you can see here a whole series of sketchbook pages investigating different weights and balances of colour. Colour could be done digitally, but it also could be explored through mark making, and here we have a student experimenting with different compositional studies. This particular student showing us a series of sketchbook pages where ideas have been developed through looking at urban architecture. This particular student used collage as their main mechanism for generating visual ideas. And we can see part printmaking, part embroidery and part, resolved prints. These are lithographs on the right hand side. This student also did some monoprinting and took some of those monoprinting ideas into relief print. And again, we've got a series of different versions of image exploration. What I would say about printmaking is that it can be useful to see the fact that you've taken the same set of elements and experimented with them, but also be wary of showing us maybe 10 colour variations of exactly the same image. Drawing can be done in a variety of materials and media. So drawing could be done digitally, which might inform visual idea development. You could be experimenting with drawing with collage, drawing with mixed media. This particular student, a textile student here, is analysing some visual research, translating that into fabric manipulation, taking that back into drawing again. Here we've got someone who's kind of knitting and weaving with found materials and then sort of drawing inspiration from those. Here various ideas are being fed from architecture. Another textile student here experimenting with the idea of the configuration of lines, dots and marks. Again, a sketchbook page like this shows you lots and lots of kind of really good kind of development of ideas. Another textile student here looking at a piece of visual research, so they've made some observational drawing and now they're experimenting with colour and experimenting with composition, thinking about mark making, thinking about the negative positive shape relationships. And again, further visual development through the sketchbook. So if you're photographing a sketchbook, you can photograph a singular image, but also you can photograph maybe a double page spread. When you are taking photographs, you don't necessarily need to have a professional studio, but placing your sketchbook near an open window is quite useful so that you get nice, flat, even light. Be wary about the shadows that you might be casting over your work. If you're using the flash gun on your mobile phone, just be careful if the surface is a bit shiny. Sometimes you can get hot spots on the image, but generally, even on an overcast day, you can get pretty good lighting, and your mobile phone is more than capable of producing high resolution images. But obviously bear in mind that high resolution images, when put into a PowerPoint presentation, will take up a lot of memory, so therefore it's really useful to learn how to compress those images as well. This is a sculpture student now. So sculpture obviously can be made in physical space and you might have loads of materials at your disposal. But also you can propose ideas through drawing. You can make small scale models which show us the sort of thinking that you've got. So don't dismiss materials that are easy to manipulate. Play-Doh is just as viable a medium to work with as chewing gum, as sellotape, as tubes of spaghetti. In this instance, we've got a student here kind of experimenting with foam, developing kind of visual thinking. And then obviously more resolved work which have been taken through into, a student show. Here we've got some video work. You may have already made some videos, so if you're going to include videos, you might have a link in your portfolio to a Vimeo site or a YouTube site. Obviously that way you can conserve the memory of your digital portfolio. Within that as well, it's quite useful if you're putting this into your portfolio to identify the length of time of the video, the sort of themes and the concepts of the ideas that you've been exploring. And again, you might show us one slide which shows us lots of different activities. If you're thinking about illustration, then obviously it's really good to see your worksheets where you might be developing lots of visual ideas using a broad range of media. Again, worksheets can be really advantageous because you can see all of your ideas in one place. But sketchbooks are also important. And don't be so fixated by the idea that you've got to have a style. That will develop and grow as you get older, but for the moment it's important to show us that willingness to explore, take risks and try things out. So you might work in a whole range of different ways. Fine line pen, collage, embroidery, mixed media, oil pastel, paint, all of those things can be used to make images. If you're a 3D design student, are you showing us some of the objects that you've made, but are you also showing us your sort of drawing as a thinking tool? Here you might be analysing the structures or the way that things join together. Here you might be positing ideas of how you see your work developing. Are you more interested in furniture? Are you more interested in interiors? Are you more interested in product design? Are you more interested in vessel forms? So again, drawing can be a really quick way of showing us your thinking process. Again, you can use a lot of different ranges of media and material. You can develop your ideas through painting if that's important. This is a really good example of a 3D design student who's using drawing and taking drawings into 3D. So here you can see things like metal manipulation, plastic manipulation, taking that also into paper manipulation. This is another 3D design student, again showing us idea development through drawing, and particularly investigating an aspect of landscape which has been inspired by the idea of low resolution images. This is the same student starting to make experimental paintings and also making contextual links. Here we see some fashion students, this time again using source material as an inspiration. So as a fashion student, you can be looking at all sorts of different things to inspire your work, whether it's insects, whether it's sculpture, whether it's work from another culture. It's about that development of ideas. Fashion's much more about the development of ideas on the body rather than just dressmaking. So showing us that thinking process. It might be as simple as what could you do with a shirt? How could you manipulate a jumper? How do you deconstruct a garment and put it back together again? So again, good idea development. Traditionally, you would have been invited for an interview. And at the moment, as we've said, the interview isn't happening this year. That doesn't mean to say that this video is only going to last for this year. In next year, hopefully we'll have that opportunity for you to come in and talk to us about your work. If that's the case, end of February to the mid-April period is when we start to carry out interviews. Usually get interviewed by 1 or 2 people, often will include a student, and interviews can last between 15 and 20 minutes, largely dependent on the number of people that have applied for a course. So one of the key things to think about then is, how do you present your ideas? At that point, it's a really good idea to think about your portfolio as a sandwich, opening up on a really strong piece of work, ending on a really strong piece of work, showing us much more the kind of, the experimental work, the things that maybe you're not even sure about at the moment. To see the ideas and how they're explored for a variety of means again is crucial. And it would be great to see your portfolio as an example of finished piece of work, experimental pieces of work, but also really important to see your sketchbooks. So your portfolio is about showing us your interests and about how you explore ideas. They can contain lots of different things. And, if you're not quite sure if you're going to put something in, maybe talk to your tutors, maybe talk to somebody else about whether you think it's something that ought to be looked at. But the key thing to think about is that if we don't see that the fact that you've tried those things out, then we don't know that you've done those things. So don't be limiting yourself too much. If you do eventually have a situation where you come for an interview, then one of the key questions is, why are you wanting to study this particular kind of course? What's in your portfolio that's important to you? What's in your portfolio that maybe the member of staff has told you to put in there? What artists, what designers, what makers have influenced your practice? What else have you been looking at? Have you been to the theatre? What books have you been looking at? What films influence your thinking? Do you have any relevant work experience? Have you worked with a gallery? Have you worked with a choreographer? Have you been doing some stuff based on stages? What's your future aspirations? And to a certain extent, that's when you can really start to sell your passion for the work that you're making and for the area of art or design that you're going into. And that enthusiasm is really infectious. So obviously, we're in this weird situation at the moment where the portfolio has to jump out a lot. But as I say, if you do have any questions, then do feel free to ping us a line. You can look up individual course leaders and find out, particular names. And we're more than willing to sort of help you make the right decision. Because obviously it's important that we get you on the right course at the right time. That way you'll make full use of it.